anticipate how growth will occur or happen. We do our best in the planning fields to anticipate how the market react and how demographics will change over time. But the fact of the matter is things do change unpredictably. And we do have the zoning code in this process that we're going through to control those things that don't fit our plans exactly.
Right. Well, if there's no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bender?
Aye.
Gagnon?
No.
Kronzer?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer? No. Magrino?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Slack?
Aye.
Breland?
No.
So that's 5 yeses, 3 noes.
Oh, and that motion carries. We have 6 more applications. Next is a conditional use permit for height. Commissioner Slack.
Motion to approve staff recommendation for item B, conditional use permit for increased permitted height in the C3A, including the 3 included conditions.
Right. You have a motion and a second to approve item B, the conditional use permit. Commissioner Magrino, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of quickly, editorialize a little bit with this one, because I think, just judging from the input here, I think a lot of the opposition here really is to the building being 6 stories rather than 4 stories, and people looking at the land use map that's in the small area plan. And I guess I've brought it up before, but it is a little bit frustrating when we do these small area plans and we make a big watercolor map of the neighborhood and people get really attached to it and they spend a lot of time on it, but then it doesn't actually match the zoning categories that we have. And so we kind of have to do the best we can to match the zoning categories with the small area plan. And I think a lot of times they sort of err on the side of being cautious. So I don't know, I guess that's just a thought. The small area plans have been, I guess, a source of frustration for everybody. And I hope that it's something that the city can think about a little bit in the future as we're going towards the comp plan update.
Commissioner Rockwell, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the, just because the height increases the density of the hotel, and on the transportation, there were some issues brought up about parking. And I realize that biking is not necessarily year-round for a lot of people, but transit is. And this is off of 2 of the 5 busiest transit routes in the city. You can get to both downtowns with a 3-block walk from this location. And this is the direction the city is headed in a variety of policy documents that we are trying to move towards a more transit able city. And this is a perfect location, and if we can't develop in these locations, then we can't develop anywhere. The 6 and as I said, the 6 and the 21 I can get you anywhere. And it's a transit-dependent person. I appreciate that. So I just wanted to make that quick note on the transportation feasibility of this site and the fact that there are only 35 parking spaces.
All right, thank you. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit for height. Clerk, please call the roll.
Breland?
Aye.
Slack?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Magrino?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Kronzer?
Aye.
Gagnon?
No.
Bender?
Aye.
That's 7-1.
All right, and that motion carries. Next, we have a series of 4 variances. Commissioner Slack, would you like to continue?
I'll take the first one. Make a motion to approve staff recommendation for item C, variance to exceed maximum floor area ratio in the C3A district.
Is there a second? And a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that, this question of bulk is one that I always take very seriously. So I reviewed very carefully staff's arguments about the bulk, the FAR variance application. And I think in this case, again, like the rezoning, it was well supported by staff. I do wonder if our FAR policies, there's something else that I think I'd like us to take a look at going forward. We have a lot of bonuses related to bulk. So just, I think this is highlighting for me the need for us to really understand how we're regulating bulk within our FAR, how it corresponds with our zoning categories. Again, we have a lot of commercial corridors that are low commercial zones, so they're C1 and C2, which really limits the FAR. Is that what we really intend to do? Is our intention really more to regulate the uses? It's because, again, we've talked about this before, we're really regulating bulk and use through the same classifications, and they don't always line up. So just a note, perhaps an editorializing of, I really think this is an important topic, and again, I think that staff did a good job here of identifying the reasons that this application met the requirements for the variance.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to approve item C, the variance for FAR. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bender?
Aye.
Gagnon?
Aye.
Cronzer?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Negrino?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Slack?
Aye.
Freeland?
Aye.
8-0.
And next, we have the variance for the front yard setback along Emerson Avenue. Commissioner Slack.
Make a motion to approve staff recommendation for item D, variance of front yard setback along Emerson.
And just to clarify, that staff recommendation is to deny the application. We have a motion and a second to deny the front yard setback variance. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Lupke-Peer.
Yeah, I actually, I'm curious about this one just because I was kind of really enthralled with all the testimony going on, but I had to say it kind of got lost in the midst of all of it, and nobody discussed whether or not they have a preference for whether the hotel gets pushed farther to the south in terms of massing as opposed to eating up that tiny rectangle farther to the west. So I kind of wish that we could kind of have somehow addressed it in public testimony to find out what the residents are actually feeling in regard to this, because my gut says that maybe perhaps they wouldn't necessarily care if this one got approved because it might actually benefit them not to have it there, but then I don't know. So, I mean, I guess I'd be curious to know. Maybe you guys click through a show of hands if you want this denied, could you click through up your hand? If you want it approved? Not that it matters, I'm just curious. I'm trying to test the temperature and I don't know. So, I mean, I guess that's my thought. I'm rambling at this point, sorry.
Ms. Helene, can you respond to that?
Just as a point of clarification, we had a similar conversation about a month ago on the Mount Olivet application. It doesn't need to be an either or, that the bulk is either going to be in the front yard or it's going to be in the side yard. You also have the option of holding them to the current side yard setback, which would result in a decrease in the overall FAR, and holding them to both setbacks. So.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If there's none, clerk, please call the roll.
Freeland?
Aye.
Slack?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Negrino?
Aye.
Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Cronzer? Gagnon?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
8-0.
Okay, and then we have two more variances and the site plan review. Commissioner Slack.
Make a motion to approve staff recommendation for items E, variance to reduce east rear yard setback, and item F, variance to reduce minimum loading requirement.
We have a motion and a second to approve items E and F, two variances. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Bender?
Aye.
Gagnon?
Aye.
Cronzer? Lipke-Peer?
Aye.
Negrino?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Slack?
Aye.
Freeland?
Aye.
8-0.
And that motion carries. Item G is the site plan review. Commissioner Slack.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve staff recommendation for item G, site plan review.
All right, and there are 7 conditions stated there. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to approve the site plan. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Bender.
Aye.
Gagnon.
Aye.
Cruiser.
Aye.
Lipke.
Aye.
Lubrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Slack.
Aye.
Breland.
Aye.
8-0.
And that motion carries. And that concludes our discussion on item 6. We can move on next to item 7, which is the Linden Hills zoning map and zoning code text amendment. Staff is Mr. Schaefer. Wait just a moment to allow the room to clear out. All right, I think we can get started.
Chair, Commissioners, we're here to talk about the Linden Hills rezoning study and the proposed staff changes for the zoning code and zoning text amendments. The purpose of the rezoning study is to implement the Linden Hills Small Area Plan. This was adopted in 2013 by the City Council. We are tasked as CPED and you as the Commission to implement the policy of the Small Area Plan related to its land use through the zoning code text amendment or zoning code classifications and zoning code text. Before I kind of go through the whole process, I want to just kind of give you a background in the Linden Hills Small Area Plan, the process in developing that. There was an evolution, and it's relevant to, I think, some of the comments you received today and kind of the legacy of that project or process.
Can I interrupt you? If you don't mind, step out into the hallway for your conversation. Sorry. Okay, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair Brown. So I just wanted, reiterate kind of go back through just the evolution of that development. So we're not going to start back in the dawn of time, but we'll start back with the development of the plan where CPED worked with the Linden Hills Neighborhood Council to develop a small area plan. We went through an extensive public process, which is documented in your packets. Actually, there's links to a lot of the different public input that came throughout. But during that process, we came up to a development of a plan that we brought forward for the 45-day public comment period. This is the September 5th draft of the small area plan. And at that time, in the plan states, establish a building height maximum of 3 stories or 42 feet, whichever is less. If the development is a mixed-use or commercial residential building, new or in addition, and 35 feet maximum for residential buildings, new or addition, within the neighborhood commercial nodes and along the P&A corridors. So that was the way that the plan came forward through the steering committee and through the public process. This was in response to a lot of community input. We've done surveys on bulk and height and discussion. There was an overwhelming interest in 2.5-story to 3-story development heights. We showed a few 4-story prototypes in that process, heard strongly against that. And during the same time of the 45-day public comment period, during this time, we brought it to the City Planning Commission Committee of the Whole meeting to this body. And both the Planning Commission and also other CPED staff identified concerns about that plan's recommendations based on the feet height and the stories of 3 stories to meet the policy goals within the comprehensive plan for growth. So as a result of that, CPED brought a proposal back to the Planning Commission or to the steering committee. That's just dated October 23rd. The idea was to start to figure out how to accommodate a 4-story to help try to meet that encouragement from the Planning Commission to accommodate more growth. So we went through and wanted to document a preference for a 3-story height for new multifamily and mixed-use buildings, but allow for a 4-story if the building height did not exceed 50 feet, and a 4-story step back at least 10 feet. So this was a recommendation to CPED, to the steering committee. Again, it also talked about modifying the building walls, trying to break up what one of the steering committee members stated during the Linden Hills Small Area Plan development, ocean liner buildings that seemed really long and out of scale with the kind of varied context. The steering committee didn't want to adhere to those recommendations, and also the reason why the STEEP had brought forward the idea of stepping back to 4-story and some of the other requirements was just try to accommodate some of the concerns we heard during the public process about buildings being too tall, buildings being too long, shadowing of adjacent property owners that are low-density residential, things that this commission's heard before in other projects. So during a course of about a month, a little under a month, we CPED worked with the steering committee. It wasn't the easiest of working of situations. I think there was a lot of conversation, a lot of compromise, and a lot of discussion. Ended up being a process to establish the plan that was finally put forward by CPED and the steering committee that came forward to this body for recommendation for adoption was establish a maximum height of 44 feet for new multifamily and mixed-use buildings, stating that 3 or 4 stories are allowed within this maximum height. I think that's important because that's the first introduction of 3 or 4 stories being allowed in that maximum height. It also talked about having the 4-story step back being codified. It also brought up the idea of the additional setbacks from adjacent low-density development. That came to this body, the Planning Commission, and also came through the City Council. The fee height requirements were removed. Other modifications were made. Ultimately, this is what was adopted by the City Council. This is the adopted Linden Hills Small Area Plan policy guidance. This speaks probably to some of the conversations about where the community's input was, where the CPED and the Planning Commission's and the City Council's final adoption. By removing the maximum height in feet, it left with a maximum height of 3 or 4 stories is allowed for multifamily and residential and mixed-use buildings within the 3 neighborhood commercial nodes, and also along the 2 community corridors. It also included a statement of encouraging overall building heights and floor-to-floor heights that reflect the adjacent architectural context and encourage buildings that are shorter than the zoning code maximums of 3 or 4 stories. This is related to the 42 feet of height, which is the definition of a 3-story building, and 56 feet of height, which is the definition of a 4-story building in our zoning code. And then it also includes the 4-story being stepped back from the public street by 10 feet. So with that, just a little bit just a grounding in how that plan came to be adopted, and I'm happy to answer questions and move forward. I wanted to start to walk into the land use recommendation or the rezoning recommendations. So starting with the primary or base zoning changes, there are 3 areas within the rezoning study that CPED is recommending going from residentially zoned property to commercially zoned property. These properties include, I have to admit that it was written, mistransposed in the staff report. It's 4351 France. I think the staff report called it 4531 France, but it's 4351 France. This is the France 44 wine and spirits. The property is currently split zoned down the middle, so the parcel has 2 different zoning requirements, something that CPED tries to avoid. One is C2 and one is R1A. Staff is proposing to turn that all to C2. Moving east, the site here is 4532 Abbott Avenue South. It is currently used as a parking lot. It's part of an old trolley right-of-way that extended part of the old Southeast Como Harriet Street line, car line that came through the neighborhood. The city of Minneapolis Public Works owns that, so this is a city-owned property. It's used for parking for the businesses in the area. CPED is proposing, because it's within the neighborhood commercial node, we're bringing that zoning to C1 neighborhood commercial node. Additionally, up in the far corner here, there's a little wing that pops up in the 43rd and Upton neighborhood commercial node. And that property is 2718 43rd Street West. That currently is split zoned. The north half of the property is zoned R4. The south half is zoned C1. CPED is proposing to turn that into all commercial C1 zoning as well. It's relevant because it gets to a point that's been brought up, and just want to make sure that you as a commission know this, is that every time the city proposes to, or anybody proposes to change the zoning on a property from residential to commercial, you have to comply with state statutes. State statutes included here, it states that anytime that rezoning is occurring, you need to get signatures of 2/3 of the property owners within 100 feet. Or if the zoning is part of a 40-acre survey or planning study, the Linden Hills Small Area Plan was the planning study, the rezoning study is the 40-acre study, and the Planning Commission determines the number of properties affected by the proposed amendments written or obtaining of such a written consent impractical. We stated in the staff report there were about 50 properties that we'd have to go and speak with. An important aspect of this is that we've adopted policy from the city. We have state statutes that require us to have policy, our zoning code match our policy. If we were unable to get those consent signatures, we would not be able to actually have our zoning reflect our policy, which calls for these areas to be commercial. So it's not only is it impractical, it also is a kind of a circular argument that we get into. There are 3 other areas that we're proposing to change the base zoning on. These areas are currently zoned low density residential. They're proposing to go to medium density residential. They're highlighted here on the map. And here's just the zoning map, which is included in your staff reports. I believe this is attachment number 2. We'll come back to this. So areas called for medium density. This is along the southern corner of the rezoning study, which is at 46th in France. North on this image is actually to going that direction. So on the left side of the screen, this is 46th Street. This is France. There are 2 parcels there that are currently zoned R2B that we're proposing to zone R4. We're also proposing to put the pedestrian-oriented overlay over those. We'll get into that in a moment. The next is an area highlighted in red in the box that's currently at the northwest corner of 44th and Drew. Now, orientation now is north is up on the rest of these, so I apologize for the other orientation. That property is currently zoned R1A. You can see on the zoning map, which is next to it, that's proposed to go to R4. In both situations, the child care facility that's on the site would be a conditional use permit in both the R4 and in the R1A zoning districts. The adjacent properties are also in R4, for the adjacent townhomes here are zoned R4. Also, areas called for medium density is 44th and Xerxes. This is a broader site. This is the northeast corner of 44th and Xerxes. Contains 6 parcels. Staff is proposing medium density is currently there as well. We'll talk a little bit more about the detail of that, but it's currently zoned R1A. See here, 5 of the 6 properties are currently used for densities that are higher than single family. So the small area plan provides guidance regarding the rezoning. There's a few of these are guidance is what we use to make our recommendation. It states that medium density is proposed. That is a density between 20 and 50 dwelling units per acre. It also states a maximum height of 3 or 4 stories is allowed along the neighborhood commercial nodes and in the community corridors. Additionally, an excerpt from the text of the small area plan says, due to the existing character and development patterns on 43rd and Upton, 44th and Beard, 44th in France, and along 44th Street in France, community corridors allowing 3 or 4 story buildings while encouraging shorter overall building heights expressed in feet is considered the most respectful of the existing character. The intent of this is to allow for achievable densities that would call for in the city policies while encouraging compatible design through lower maximum foot heights in buildings than allowed by the current zoning ordinance. So in the small area plan, we actually stated that 3 or 4 stories would be allowed and appropriate. So there are 2 zoning districts that we have to choose from that are medium density within the city, R3 and R4. R3 allows for 29 dwelling units per acre, has a height of 2.5 stories or 35 feet, has a floor area ratio of 1 and a required front yard of about 20 feet. R4 has a 35 dwelling units per acre, so that's about halfway between 20 and 50, actually right halfway. Height of 4 stories not to exceed 56 feet and a floor area ratio of 1.5 and a required front yard of 15 feet. So these are the 2 zoning districts that the city has to choose from when we're applying for medium density on the site. The city, looking at the fact that 3 or 4 stories is what's called for in the plan and achievable, those achievable heights, R4 would be the only one of those districts that allows that right out of the gate. R4 multiple family zoning district is what we're proposing, but to keep in consistent and implement the policies of the small area plan, we're adding proposing to add 2 provisions in the Lynn Hills, actually more than 2, but these 2 specifically related to modifying the building height and bulk. This is what's called for in the small area plan about stepping the 4th story back from any public street, an additional 10 feet from the building wall. So this is a step back in that building. And additionally, it calls for the top floor of any building of 3 or 4 or more stories to be set back an additional 10 feet from low density development. So in this case, R1, R1A, R2, and R2B property. So this is part of what we're proposing in the pedestrian oriented overlay. CPED believes this meets the small area plan requirements and implements the plan. Next, moving into the small area plan.
Yeah, Commissioner Lukey here, maybe if you have a
So I just have a
question.
quick question on the last slide. So those are just 2 standard things that come with pedestrian and PO district overlay, though, right? Those aren't special.
Those are special to Linden Hills.
So those are unique to this neighborhood.
They will be unique to this neighborhood based on the Linden Hills area portion of the Linden Hills overlay, or the pedestrian oriented overlay, which I will get into a little bit further.
Okay. And do we have other neighborhoods where we've made special overlays?
We have some of the uptown, or some of our, not the uptown, some of our other pedestrian oriented overlay, the modified portions of that have minimum FARs of 2.0. Some others talk about the building wall length in the Nicollet Franklin. So we do talk about building design specifically in some of our pedestrian oriented overlays.
But it's pretty common that have exceptions and special rules for neighborhoods in Minneapolis, though.
In this case, it's not necessarily for a neighborhood; it's for an area within the we've called adopted policy. But we're trying to implement the best policy.
But in terms of the small area plans, I mean, it's pretty common then
to have different requirements.
To have specific, more strict requirements than would be allowed under the zoning.
In small area plans, we do have different requirements that come out. Most notably, I think the Mill District area where we call for a height that's different than what our zoning code matches. So we do have some specifics that don't always match up exactly to different zoning codes or different elements. You experienced one conversation just earlier about that in Uptown.
Thank you.
So the existing Linden Hills overlay, the small area plan, then during the course of the small area plan, we reviewed the existing zoning code and how it's applied to the area and determined that it prohibits certain uses under the Linden Hills overlay and also has a higher parking requirement than anywhere else pretty much within the city. And so the small area plan adopted language to study and refine the existing Linden Hills overlay zoning district to reflect the guidance in the small area plan, including the amount and location of parking and allowed uses. So during the course of the work on the rezoning study, CPED determined that many of the elements within the Linden Hills overlay district, this is the existing Linden Hills overlay district, are redundant, less restrictive, or inconsistent with other elements within the Minneapolis zoning code. The staff report goes into great detail about this. It should be noted specifically, and this has been a point of significant comment you will see when we get to public comments, or if you've read through your comment staffs or comments for this plan, is that the plan does not specifically call for staff to remove the Linden Hills overlay. It also does not state which district to rezone any of these properties to, or does it tell us to codify the step backs or setbacks that we are proposing. This is CPED has the responsibility to use its best judgment to implement the policies of the small area plan with the regulatory tools we have before us. The existing pedestrian overlay district does carry much of the same guidance with Linden Hills overlay regarding building design. In fact, most of the pedestrian oriented overlay is a copy of what originally was the start of the Linden Hills overlay, which predated the pedestrian oriented overlay. So the Linden Hills overlay was adopted in 1997 prior to the city's first pedestrian oriented overlay portion of the zoning ordinance. So it actually was a precursor. It talks about the building design, having more windows, building up to the street where allowed by the zoning code. Where there's requirements in Linden Hills overlay district that are not covered by the pedestrian oriented overlay, the requirements from chapter 530, the site plan review portion of our zoning code provides similar or more restrictive guidance in most cases. The staff report again goes into more detail on that. A couple just highlights of that is that it prohibits bike and inline skate rental, movie rental. It also creates a different way of calculating parking for restaurants and coffee shops. It's based on seats versus floor area. Back a long time ago, the zoning code used seats as a definition for counting parking requirements. It also includes outdoor seating within that. While that varies from project to project, the results in a higher parking requirement than anywhere else within the city, within Linden Hills. Also, the screening and setback requirements for parking within the Linden Hills overlay, the existing Linden Hills overlay, are less restrictive than the guidance within Chapter 530 of Site Plan Review. Again, I go into more detail in the staff report. a little bit more about just the pedestrian-oriented overlay. I know this committee the commission knows a lot about the pedestrian overlay district, but it's currently adopted in a variety of areas within Minneapolis, including Dinkytown, Uptown, West Broadway, and all the transit lines, transit stations along the LRT lines. This is something that's brought up and is slightly relevant purposely just because it's been interpreted in a lot of the comments that this is looping areas in with West Broadway or Uptown or Dinkytown. It's also applied to 5 of our neighborhood commercial nodes within Minneapolis, and those are listed here. So CPED's making a recommendation.
Mr. Schaefer, Commissioner Bender has a
I
question.
just have a small question 2 slides back. It's not that big a deal, but this is very specific, so I'm just curious about the bike and inline skate rental, and I missed if you said why that would be specifically not prohibited in this part of town.
This was the 1997 existing Linden Hills overlay prohibits bike rental and inline skate rental and movie stores of a certain size. We are proposing, these are things that exist that now that we're proposing not to carry forward any further. So it's not a staff recommendation. I'm sorry if I glassed that over. But it was, I think, it speaks to when this was developed. The original overlay was developed in 1997, and those uses were kind of prevalent around the lakes, and there were some concerns about that. There was a lot of history in the development of that, and I don't have all the different notes to tell you exactly why that was included.
Okay, Mr. Schaefer should
we'll keep
continue.
moving
The public hearing isn't open yet.
Yeah.
We can talk further in a moment.
Remove Linden Hills overlay. Back to the CPED recommendation. So the CPED is proposing to remove the Linden Hills overlay, retire that. Create a Linden Hills area portion of the pedestrian-oriented overlay district, which includes the following. So there's 4 requirements here. 1 is off-site parking. Notwithstanding any of the provisions with the contrary, allowing the non-residential uses in Linden Hills area